I'm Stan Waddell. I'm the university's information security officer. I guess that responsibility spans, the entire campus, School of Medicine and whatnot, but not necessarily the hospitals. But enough about me. You guys didn't come to hear about me, I'm sure. October is officially National Cybersecurity Month. It was officially declared National Cybersecurity Month by President Obama. And the purpose of declaring the month the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month is so that everyone is aware of the importance of information security or cybersecurity, and that everyone work together to secure the nation's computers. So the agenda that I have for today is largely covering safe browsing. I do intend to give a brief internet overview and then proceed into using strong passwords, maintaining your computer, using good software sources, and establishing confidence in websites. Scope of the briefing is basically security basics. This is not, cybersecurity or forensic analysis, graduate level. This is safe web browsing 101. So I won't be covering things like SQL injection or remote code injection or even altering the security settings on your web browser. These are basic tips for safe browsing. So in terms of an internet overview, what is the internet, what is internet browsing, and what are some common threats? And I'll just go ahead and jump right into it. What is the internet? Not the Matrix. That's a line from a movie that I really like. As you guys will see in this presentation, I am a geek, but enough about that. So the internet is a loose connection, a global loose connection of computers that are networked together for the purpose of serving information and providing services. Uses Internet Protocol Suite, TCP/IP, to connect computers and serves billions of users worldwide. It has no centralized governance for either technology or implementation, and it has no policies for use or access. So it's the wild, wild internet, if you will. I borrowed that from Wikipedia, but that's a pictorial representation of the billions of points of light that make up the internet. What is web browsing? And borrowing from some Web 2.0 language or some texting language, in my humble opinion, web browsing is the practice of visiting websites with no specific destination in mind. I think that it's important to, to characterize the difference between using the internet purposefully and browsing. Mostly when we're browsing, we may have a desired target in mind, but we don't necessarily know what site we're going to settle on, and that's important. It's not the same as using specific sites purposefully. It's rare that you're going to, if you're purposefully using Bank of America's website or BBT's website or eBay, it's rare that you're going to encounter an exploit there. You know exactly where you're going to a trusted site, and it's not likely that your computer's going to get infected there. But if you're searching for the best banking site to go to or the best internet trading marketplace, you may run across a site that is hosting malware that you're not so sure about, and that could put your computer at risk. I liken that to trying to navigate a minefield or betting against the house at Vegas. Ultimately, you are going to hit something that's going to get your computer. It's just a matter of the odds. Some common web security issues. Trojan horse, other malicious software. So web servers can become infected. They can be compromised by hackers, by other forms of malware, and that can lead them or lend them the capability to have malware on them. And you visit the website and you get infected. Malware or malicious software mostly falls into some category similar to these: viruses. Just software that's written to take advantage of your computer, to make your computer do something that you didn't intend for it to do. Same thing with Trojans. Trojans are just another form of malware that hides malicious software on your computer so you can't find it. Worms are malware or virus, and not viruses, but they're malware that can spread by themselves. Once you get it, and every other computer that's vulnerable to the same kind of exploit can be infected by your computer. It's self-replicating, self-spreading. There's scareware or fake AV. These are software, malicious software that are very prevalent today. You've probably run across some of these yourselves where you clicked on a link and all of a sudden you got a pop-up and it says, your computer has 10,000 viruses. Click here and give us your credit card number and we will fix this right now. That's scareware. It's designed to scare you into buying a product or giving up some of your sensitive information that will then be used for ill. And then there's exploit code. It's software that gets written into a web page that's designed to infect your computer and take advantage of weaknesses that your computer has. Aside from software, there are individuals that hack. Sometimes for fun, sometimes for profit, but mostly for profit. And these individuals are capable of attacking your computer and taking advantage of the weaknesses your computer has to compromise your information or to get your credit card information or to get your username and passwords to other sites that you might visit. Primarily, their motivation is money, 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 money. There are reports out there reports that exist that assert that cybercrime now exceeds the drug trade in terms of profitability. So that would make it a billion-dollar industry. We definitely see that malware is on the rise. Every year, the number of pieces of malware that come out increase. Last year, it was 73,000 new pieces of malware every day. You know, back in the early 2000s or the late 90s, it was in the teens or the hundreds per day. Now we're looking at 73,000 per day. That's a huge number of pieces of malware. According to one security company, Dazient, 1.3 million websites hosted malware in 2010. So it's just almost an unfathomable number of sites that have malware on them. And you can't necessarily look at a site, even I can't, look at a site and say, oh, that one has malware, and I'm going to avoid that. So all of this can appear daunting, but there are things that we can do to protect ourselves. We can hold up our hand and stop the malware bullets too. First thing I always advise is that people should use strong passwords and manage their passwords appropriately. Passwords aren't the best, last, greatest thing in terms of securing a computer, but they are a thing that will protect and secure your computer, and they should not be glossed over and not managed. They are a line of defense. In the section I'll cover using passphrases instead of passwords, not using the same password for all sites, and using password managers. In terms of passphrases instead of passwords, I think early on, we as security professionals and IT professionals talked about passwords. But that really is a misnomer. I don't think anybody intended for us to have passwords. They're too easily guessable. So if my password is cat, and someone's trying to guess my passwords, especially if I'm a cat lover, which I am not, maybe it would be dog then. But if someone was trying to guess that password, they could probably do it pretty easily, especially if they knew anything about me. So my recommendation is that users or individuals use passphrases. And you can put these together fairly easily, and you can make really complex passwords that are hard to guess both by human beings and by computers by just using things that you know. I will take a mixture of either songs, two songs that aren't the same, or two phrases from songs that aren't the same, or nursery riddles. I can create a very complex password out of hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, and the cow jumped over the moon, or I forget what that next one is, but Jack and Jill went up the hill. I usually have pictures to prompt me, but it's 14 characters, and I can remember that with impunity. Same thing for the next one. Where are my pictures? Here we go. So hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, and Jack and Jill went up the hill. Two things dissimilar. Just taking the first letters of each of the words and mixing them together with a practice that's called leeting. The hackers call the process when you change regular characters out with special characters, leeting. Makes them sound like they're cool or look cool, but I do like the word. But so the A in hey diddle diddle and the cat and the fiddle is a add symbol, and the and is an ampersand. The next set of things I was using are songs, two dissimilar songs. It's hip to be square, and dude looks like a lady, and you can probably tell I'm a product of the 80s. Those are 80s songs. Steven Tyler's cool though. That's passphrases. Next thing I do advise is that you don't use the same password for multiple sites. And the reason for that is if someone gets your password and you only have one, it's pretty easy to string together the types of accounts that you have. There's a couple of different tools, and they're outside of the scope of this, but I'll mention them briefly, that someone can put in an email address for you, and it'll spider the web and look for every reference that exists for that email. And you can put a really good profile together about somebody just by that simple tool, and it's hitting a button. And if you got one password, and I see you have 10 accounts, and I get that one password, I'll try that password on every one of those accounts to see if I can get in, if I were a bad guy and a hacker. I'm not. I'm speaking hypothetically. I'm a good guy. And that can become complicated. So, if you don't want to have 20 passwords or 30 passwords, depending on however many accounts you have, break it into segments. And that way, if somebody does get one, they don't have all of your sites. Specifically your financial account information, make them stronger, longer, more complex, and don't use that for your social networking or your email password. Or even your internet storage account passwords, because social networking and email passwords fall a lot more readily than anything else, because there is so much information, there are so many users, and the websites change frequently that the bad guys recognize that, and they compromise those sites pretty readily. And they get those passwords pretty easily as well. So don't share those across sites. If you do want to have 20 or 30 passwords but want it to be easy, use a password manager. And there are a number of tools out there that are free that are designed to do nothing but manage your passwords. You log into that tool with one password and it remembers the rest. And every time you try to go to a website, it knows that you've stored or logged that password with the tool. You pop up the browser and you go to ebay.com, and that tool fills your username and password in based on the one username and password you logged in on. And it only exists on the token or on somewhere on your computer, and is not readily available for compromise by the bad guy. One of the popular ones that a lot of people on campus use is KeyPass. A lot of people use Password Safe. I use an Iron Key. It's an encrypted USB token. I love this thing, so I do talk about it quite a bit. It's made out of metal. You can wash it in the dishwasher. You can run over it with an SUV, and I haven't done either of those to it, but it'll still work, and it has a password manager on it. One password, access to all my websites with very, very, very complex passwords for super secret, sensitive websites, like my banking account. But IronKey is not the only company that makes those secure USBs. There's Data Store Travelers and other things. So that's passwords. One of the other things that I like to talk about for securing your computer for safe web browsing is maintaining your computer. So one of the reasons computers get compromised so readily or so frequently is because they have weaknesses. Human beings write computer code, and human beings make mistakes. Human beings learn new things about coding daily and recognize that they've left holes for bad guys to get into. So they're constantly fixing those weaknesses. The operating system vendors, Microsoft and Windows, or Apple or Macintosh and the Apple software, they're constantly writing updates. And pretty much on a weekly basis, you get a package of updates that have to be applied to your computer. If you don't apply those, then that leaves holes for software and for human beings to gain access to your computer. Same thing holds for applications and the like, and I actually have slides. So when you see your operating system updates pop up out of your system tray saying update or reboot, go ahead and do it at that time. And I will give you a caveat on that on the next slide. But set your Windows operating system or your Macintosh operating system up for automatic updates and let it automatically get its updates and reboot itself. And that's one less thing you have to worry about. Applications won't necessarily do that. When I talk about applications, I'm talking about things like Java and Adobe Acrobat, Adobe Reader, Flash, Silverlight, iTunes. Those won't necessarily automatically update themselves. Those are the culprits that you see coming out of the corner of your system tray saying, hey, it's me, Java, and I need an update. Click OK to update me. If you don't click update, it will never update itself. And Java is one of the most readily compromised applications that's out there. And I won't, make an editorial on why that's the case, but it is one of the most readily compromised applications. So click that update button and update that software. Now, the caveat that I was going to give is that you should be careful. One of my rules of thumb is, because you guys have probably also seen things like, while you're web browsing, a pop-up comes up and says your software is out of date. Click here to update it. And that might not be legitimate. So my rule of thumb is, if I'm browsing the internet and I get a pop-up out of my system tray, the only way I'm going to click that is after I've closed the browser and closed that pop-up. I do not update while I'm browsing, because I don't want to take the chance that I'm missing something and I'm installing malicious software myself. So typically they'll pop up as you boot your computer up or as you log into your computer, but my rule of thumb, or my paranoia, is I don't click it while I'm browsing. As a tip here, I'd say use some form of browser software scanner. We've had some really good luck with browsercheck.qualys.com. And it's if you go to that site, it's really simple to use. It's the same vendor that supplies the university with its network vulnerability scanner. It's the tool we use to scan the network for weaknesses. Well, they make a browser-based version of it. You go to browsercheck.qualys.com or browsercheckqualys.com, and it lets you scan your browser for weaknesses in the browser, and it'll list every one of them. It'll list all of your add-on software pieces and packages and tell you whether or not they are up to date or not. And if they aren't up to date, you'll get a little indication off on the side that says fix it. You click to fix it. You don't have to go to another site to figure out what you need to do to fix it. You click the fix it button and it updates it. You rescan it, and if it's gone and updated, it'll show like the rest of them. Pretty simple. And I'd say at home, definitely take advantage of something like this, because you may not have an individual at home like you might have here on campus that's taking care of this for you. And spread it around. It's really simple to use. Even Mama can use it. My mother, that is, and she doesn't like computers very much. Use antivirus. There are any number of software programs out there that protect against malware. Many are free. There's AVG Free. It's highly reputable. ClamAV, highly reputable, again, effective for Mac and Linux. And for university systems or computers that you use at home for university work, you can use semantic endpoint protection, as long as you're using that computer for work purposes. And all of those software packages are great ways to protect against malicious software, viruses, what have you. I will say that our antivirus software is one of the industry leaders, one of the best that's out there, but it's probably only 30 to 40% accurate. So for every 10 pieces of software, the best it's going, malware, the best it's going to identify is going to be 4. Because remember, malware comes out so fast now that it is hard for the antivirus and the security companies to keep up with it. So you still have to be careful. You can't use antivirus and lull yourself into a sense of false security. Next section that I was going to talk about is using good software sources. So there are tons of places out on the internet today that you can get software from. And just because software is cheap or free does not mean it is good. Cheap and free don't equal good. But I'll digress. I have a couple of slides on that. Read reviews of software before installing. Take a look and see what everybody else is thinking about. And download software and scan with AV before installing, and never accept unsolicited software. So reputable software vendors. Like I said, these days you can find software all over the place. Free and cheap don't equal good. So you should know your vendors. If you're going to install something from somewhere or from some vendor, hopefully you have a sense of who that vendor is. Microsoft, Apple, Google, etc., big names, likely not going to be releasing software that will infect your computer. But there are other software vendors that aren't as well known that release good software too that is not laden with malware. Java, Adobe. I'm not necessarily espousing or advocating any vendor, but I do want you to take time and think about who it is you're installing things from. I always like to say that there is no such thing as free lunch. And so you have to ask yourself, why is software free? Are they doing it so they can generate ad revenue, so that they can point you towards resources or purchasing and they get a cut of that? Or are they seeding that software with malware to take advantage of your system's weaknesses? You have to ask yourself that. And the last thing is definitely don't get pirated software. It's never going to be a good thing. One, it's illegal. But two, in many cases, the software is seeded with malware that's designed to take advantage of your system and put your computer under the control of someone else. I've seen it a ton of times. And you're not going to get a good deal out of stolen software. And that's what pirated is a euphemism. It's stolen. Don't get stolen software. Establishing confidence in websites. So the things I'm going to cover in this section are using HTTPS only when dealing with your sensitive information or the sensitive information of the university. Make sure you are where you want it to go. Don't click on unsolicited links or questionable sites. And a tip, use a site security rater. I think I probably coined that term, but maybe not. Some common web security issues. We talked about malware and whatnot. Well, there's also phishing, where you might get an email from someone that you didn't expect to send you an email, or someone you have no idea who that person is. In many cases, these types of emails are part of a phishing expedition, where someone is trying to get you to either put in some sensitive information into a website or get your username and password. I'm sure you've seen things like, respond to this, or your email quota is up. Put in your username and password so that we can extend your email quota. We're not going to send you something like that. The university isn't. And most reputable companies won't send you something like that as well. In fact, I'm still waiting on my check from Nigeria. And, it's been 7 years now, and I still haven't received it. But there's also the possibility for data interception. If you're not using HTTPS, and I have a couple of slides on that, that means your information could be transmitted in the clear. And it's hard for someone to intercept and eavesdrop on web conversations and communications, but it is not impossible. So HTTPS is better. Some sites host malware. We talked through that. If a site is compromised and it's hosting malware, it could infect your system. So like I said, HTTPS is better. And you can tell it's HTTPS if you see that in the browser URL bar. And I blew this slide up of Bank of America so that you could specifically see the HTTPS right there. You can also see the padlock there. That's another indicator that the site is communicating in an encrypted and secure fashion. That in the URL or in the system the browser status bar, you'll see the padlock. If you don't see the padlock, communication is channel is not secure. When I was saying make sure you are where you meant to go, well, the phishers and sometimes the websites, they may seed links into websites. And folks, let me tell you, you cannot look at a website and tell that it has malware on it. You just cannot do it. HTML is the coding language that people write, one of the languages people write websites into, one of the earlier languages, probably more simple. But the coding for user ID right here is probably 3 lines of code, could be more. And it could very well be, if this were, I guess the better example would be here, locked out of password or forgot password. That's a link. That's what it's written to look like to you. But behind the scenes, there's a lot that goes into representing just that simple phrase. And it could be, www.stealthispersonspassword.com. Of course, it wouldn't be that simple, but it could be something like that. And you click on that, you think you're a BB&T, and you put in your username and password, and now the bad guys got it. One way you can, look and see if a site is where you're intending to be is to look in that URL bar again, the address bar, and make sure that's where you intended to go. If you intended to go to eBay, then it should be something ebay.com, not www.steal this username's user's passwords 1234XYZ, no DNS IP lookup. That's not where you intend it to go. It should be something, ebay.com. It may not be www.ebay.com, but it should be something, .ebay.com. Here's an example, another example of fake website. If you look in the address bar that we talked about earlier there, it says mingtrung.net, WP content uploads 2006. Obviously, that's not HSBC's website, right? And it can be that simple. When you get redirected to something that just looks weird, bail. Close the browser and walk away from it. Older versions of Internet Explorer, I think 8 and 9 probably might not do this, but have, so everything before 8 and 9, so 7, probably what most people are using, have a phishing indicator, and it's a little indicator at the bottom of the browser there. If the site's questionable, it may have an exclamation point on it. If the site's questionable, I wouldn't put my sensitive information in it. I wouldn't put my banking information or credit card information in it. Same thing would go for vendors. People set up little small sites and whatnot to make sales and do commerce, sometimes totally legitimately. But they haven't always done the things that they need to do to secure their sites. So if I run across something like this, they're not getting my credit card information. If they're not HTTPS, again, not getting my credit card information. And you can see this one is HTTP. It's CERT. It's actually one of the better computer security reference sites that are out there, and they don't do, at least not on this page, don't do e-commerce. But if it were, Bob's Gun Shack or Bob's Dry Stores or whatnot, not getting my credit card information. So I covered this a bit. Again, HTTPS and the padlock. And if you're at your bank and you don't see those things, here again, I'm probably more paranoid than most. But if my bank is not capable of doing a secure website, I want another bank. Secure transmissions, all confidential information, this is home, work, what have you, should only be transmitted using a secure form of communication. If you don't see those things, walk away from it, bail. I have actually ripped through this. I must have been nervous. Any questions up to this point? All right, well, I think it's the last thing, might not be. One of the last things I wanted to talk about are website raiders. And I don't know, I'm gonna look and see if I see that term. If not, I'm gonna trademark it. But there are tools designed to rate the trustworthiness of sites that you're trying to visit. Stephen Colbert says the truth in this, I like that, but the trustworthiness is what we're trying to get at on this. There's a couple that I know of and most familiar with that are free. One is McAfee Site Advisor, and that's by McAfee, the security company. The other is Web of Trust, and that one is more of a crowdsourced rating system, meaning everyone has some input into the ratings that the sites get. McAfee does their own ratings, but Web of Trust lets everyone comment. But I do like it. I think it's a great tool. So with Site Advisor, once you have that installed, you'll see the little Site Advisor indicator in the one of the browser add-on lines, add-on bar, toolbars. And when you do searches, it tells you what the truth in, I was gonna say it, the trustworthiness of the site is. And here's some examples, Jackpot Galore gambling site. Be worried, it's questionable. Petco, reputable site, it's green, it's good to go. Visit there with impunity. And they even get the little McAfee secure symbol, meaning McAfee has personally rated the site and found it to be okay. MP3 music downloader, they are saying that one's okay to go to as well. But when you get to fakebank.com, and who would bank with fakebank.com, I don't know. But when you get to fakebank.com, well, that one's got a big red X. Don't visit. And these are simplistic examples, but they could be very complex examples or real life examples if you are using Site Advisor. Yes, ma'am.
Does this work on a Mac?
It does. Site Advisor will work on a Mac, and Web of Trust does as well. In fact, I think both will work cross-platform, so even if you're using a Linux workstation, it'll work there too. And remember, I guess the distinction is McAfee's doing the ratings on Site Advisor. Web of Trust, and I use it. I really do like it. I'm not advocating one piece of software or over another, but I do like it because they hit a lot of sites that, because they have so many people making input on them, they hit a ton of sites. And as an example of this, I did a quick search for websites hosting malware, hoping to get some examples of bad stuff, but I didn't. I probably could have. But this is a live representation of Web of Trust. It's the acronym is WOT or WOT, but everybody just calls it Web of Trust. You can see in the search links or the search hits that all of the sites that came up were clean sites. Now, if you'll notice the first link there, the rack space, there's a yellow there. So some number of individuals found that there was something odd about the site. Not necessarily that it was hosting malware, but that there was something odd about the site. Rackspace is a reputable company, so I'm not exactly sure why that would be there, but most of the others were green. And what something like this does is lets you get a sense of confidence for whether or not it's okay to visit a site. If you don't know anything about the site, and you can see that one of these tools is saying that the site is decent or the site is not decent, then you have a level of confidence. Like I said earlier, you can't look at a website and say, that one has malware on it, if there aren't any obvious indicators. Some additional things. So if you're moving outside, if you're traveling, sometimes we need to use hotel kiosks to print boarding passes or to check email and things like that. Well, there are folks out in the world that will try to take advantage of that as well. And I know I sound like a paranoid person, because I am when it comes to cybersecurity. That's my job. But there are individuals that will seed software on kiosks in hotels or in conference rooms, in places outside of the university, and the like, that are designed to steal username and passwords. They log keystrokes. So as you're typing your information in, it is recording that information, and periodically it emails that information back to some unknown individual, and they can use it. There are examples of people getting compromised this way. Often found in hotels and airports. My best advice is, if you don't have your computer and you have to use something like that, is don't use sites that are sensitive. Don't go to your bank on a hotel kiosk computer. Break out your credit card and call the bank and get your balance. Don't try to get it from a hotel kiosk computer. Definitely don't try to access UNC resources from kiosk computers. You just don't know what those computers are doing. If you're using your computer while traveling, use VPN. Once you establish a VPN connection with the campus or wherever, all of the communications within that session can be encrypted. Specifically the ones coming back to the university systems. Those will be encrypted, and they're not subject to eavesdropping. You're using your computer, so you know it's not keystroke logging you, or you hope it's not keystroke logging you. But that gives you a level of confidence and a level of protection. I always say, definitely treat any email that you were not expecting with suspicion. And This should also, extend to emails that you weren't expecting from your friends and acquaintances, especially if it seems out of character. So one of the big problems that occurs today is that people's computers get compromised, and viruses are designed to take over their email programs, and they will start spewing spam to everyone in their email contact list. And I actually had this happen to me last year from interesting story, I guess, while using a library computer, public library computer. I was logging into Gmail, not a sensitive email client, but Gmail, and I felt fairly safe doing so. I was not. The computer had some software on it that I guess logged my keyword, my username and password, and I checked my email, closed it out, and went back to looking at books with my kids. And then the next day, I woke up and I looked in my email box and I had all these bounced messages. And the bounced messages had messages that I had not sent, nor would I send. And you guys can imagine some of the stuff that was getting sent by this. So it's embarrassing for a security professional to spam his acquaintances, but it does happen. I mean, we're human too. So you want to watch out for that, and don't click on things that you're not expecting or that seem out of character for the folks that are sending you things. If grandma is not it doesn't typically send you information about the latest, greatest new betting website, chances are she didn't send you that email. Or if she's not pointing you at websites for drugs or fake Rolexes, prescription drugs or fake Rolexes, chances are she didn't send it, right? So treat those things with suspicion. Make sure you have your Windows firewall turned on. It's a software firewall. It's not the absolute best, but it is a layer of protection. And you might sense a theme that there's a lot of stuff that you can do that adds layers. It's kind of like layering clothing in the winter. If you have on a shirt, you'll be fairly warm, but not really. You put on a light jacket or a sweater over top of that, you get warmer. You put a jacket on top of the sweater, you get even warmer. You put a scarf on and a hat, you're toasty, right? Well, that's what security is as well, is layering up. And we can't rely on one layer to sufficiently protect us. So use your software firewalls. That's the way you can do it on the Windows systems. But I would recommend, and I think most people do this now, but I'd recommend having a wireless router, or not necessarily a wireless router, but a router that has a built-in firewall in front of your high-speed connection and your computers. They have built-in firewalls that are set by default to block traffic from coming back to your computers. It's not something you have to mess with. It's not something you have to configure. It's turned on by default. In fact, you have to turn it off if you want to do something outside of the standard. They're really cheap today, and they're a great layer. But more people do that today than a couple of years ago. I guess the one last thing that I would add in terms of extra or additional protection is that for university systems. So I've mostly been talking about things that apply both to home and to work settings. But the last one is probably a plug for the information security program. If you have issues on campus with information security, computer security, call the help desk. 962-HELP, put in a ticket to information security. If you believe that sensitive information is at risk, make it critical. Gets us out of bed, makes us put the coffee cup down, makes us stop doing the other things that we were doing, and contact you immediately. And it definitely helps. The quicker we can get involved in a security risk on campus, the faster we can resolve it. And hopefully we can resolve it without any compromise to university sensitive data. But you guys also have departmental support, and every business unit has an information security liaison. That's a person in the departments that has the job to interface with my department and to help us with information security. Every business unit has one on campus. If sensitive UNC-owned information is at risk, put a critical ticket in. We will help very quickly. Last thing is just some resources. The campus IT security homepage, the information security policy summaries, KeyPass and keyword safe, password safe, Iron Key, and then the FTC site on secure web browsing. And I think that's what I had. I guess I did rip through it. What questions can I take? Yes, ma'am.
I had some users that couldn't come today.
Mm-hmm.
Will this be available?
Yes, we did videotape the session, and we will make that available somewhere on the UNC homepage. Might be off of my homepage, but it'll be available to campus. I also intend to probably later next week send out a informational note to campus summarizing the talk with a link to the video. And that way, folks that wanted to come that weren't able to make it can view the video. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What do you do if something happens, as you spoke of, with your emails and,
Okay.
inappropriate emails going out?
The first thing I do is, and the first thing I did, so I can speak from experience on this one, is change my password. Once you change your password, if people are remotely logging into your account, they can't get back in. But what you also want to do is change your questions. Most of the accounts that you use will ask you security questions, things that are designed to let them know that you are who you say you are so that they can reset your password when you forget it. Well, what the bad guys will also do is change those questions. And they had changed the questions in my Gmail account. So if I hadn't checked that, they could have gone back and did a password reset and been right back into my account. So change your password and change your security questions. If it's a problem with your home computer's email client, run antivirus and make sure that if it's not a virus that's sitting on your computer that's doing it, and make sure it gets clean. If it's on campus, put in a critical ticket to information security or your departmental IT support. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
If a virus, if I stick my flash drive into a public computer and it has a virus, can that transform my flash drive and infect my personal computer or
Yes.
another computer?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, and actually fairly easily. If a computer has a piece of malware that's designed to spread by USB, so if that's the case and you plug in, the virus software is actually watching for a change to the computer that indicates a drive's been plugged in. And once that happens, it will attempt to write to that drive. And you may not notice anything on your drive. It probably wouldn't be new files. They would hide themselves or whatnot. And once you pulled that drive out and went back to your computer, the virus could then transfer back to your computer. There are some things that make this a little tougher today, but the short answer is yes. So the same things that I said about not using sensitive information on public machines like kiosks and things like that, I would never stick one of my USB drives unless I was prepared to throw it in the trash can afterwards in a public computer. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit about the KeyPass, some of the free password managers?
Okay. I wish I had taken a picture of it, but basically, the one that I use is on this USB drive, and I plug it into the USB port on the computer. But the ones that are resident on the computer work in much the same fashion. You start the software, and you log into the software. And that's the big benefit, is that you log into that software with one username and password. And you can make it pretty complex so that it's a safe password. And the software then is running in the background. And let's say I have eBay.com saved in my password manager, and I try to go to eBay. Well, instead of me logging into eBay, as soon as I click into the login windows, the little blanks for username and password, the software says, oh, there's eBay, and I have a password for that. It'll autofill it and hit enter for me and go on into eBay. And I don't have to remember the eBay password. And so the big benefit for that is I can make my eBay password 16 characters, 17 characters, what have you. And I never have to type it in. I would remember it more than likely. I'm a security professional. But I don't have to. And if I need to get into something really quickly, and there are some passwords that I just cannot remember, but the password manager always remembers them. Yes, ma'am.
So do you log into the password manager when you first put on your computer, or only when you want to use it?
With this one, it pops up automatically because it's running as part of the USB software. But the ones like KeePass or Password Safe, those you have to start. So you click on them.
They're open.
Yep.
They'll do all of it.
They'll do all of that. Yes, ma'am.
These sites that often say, do you want us to remember your password?
Mm-hmm.
I usually think that's not a good idea.
I'd agree.
Okay.
Now, on my primary computer, if it's not a sensitive site and it's something I go to frequently, I might do that. But I would not do it for any financial sites. I wouldn't do it for any UNC sites. And you know, the challenge behind that, or the reason why that's not a good idea, is that some pieces of malware, and again, I don't want to sound like, you know, like I'm paranoid, even if I am. But many pieces of malware are designed to harvest those types of passwords. In many cases, those passwords aren't well protected, and so malware can harvest it. And so if you get a particular virus that's designed to do that, and you have those passwords saved, it could get it. And I've actually seen that happen to other individuals as well. What else can I answer? Well, I appreciate your attention. You've been a great crowd. I hope I didn't bore you too much, but thanks for coming out. I really appreciate it.